Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining me on Martinis with Scott. Did you know that 90% of all new businesses never, ever, ever pay their founder a living wage? They never pay their founder a living wage. 90% of new businesses. Did you know that most businesses fail at some point? Did you know, you youngsters out there, or those that don't pay attention to business at all, did you know that Apple was once bailed out by Microsoft because Apple was a failing business at risk of bankruptcy? Every business gets in trouble. New businesses fail 90% of the time, fail in terms of never pay their founder a living wage. What if we could change that percentage, even 1%? There's about 6 million new incorporations in the US every year. What if we could change that success ratio? What if we get the failure rate from 90% to 89%? How many lives would that improve? It's hundreds and hundreds of thousands. That's what this content is about. That's what my business is about. Come and join me. Let's see if we can learn some things together. But you say to me, Scott, that's not what I'm here for. I know why you're here. Cheers. I hope you had a great week. That's good. That is good. All right, what do we have today? I want to talk about what people value and how that should impact your sales, your negotiations, your presentations. This is leveraged off something I heard on Clubhouse a couple of weeks ago, actually, from some psychologists. And let's start with this. Let's pretend that you are a service provider. Let's say that you're a roofer. Get that in your head. You're a roofer and you're in a small community, such as the town that I live in here in southeastern British Columbia in Canada. And so you're a roofer, you're a contractor, and you're designing your marketing campaign to go out to your community to try and generate leads, to convert those leads into paid gigs, and to expand your business. What are you going to focus on? What is your sales pitch? And I think the immediate reaction of most people that hear that question would be competence. I'm going to demonstrate my competence as a roofer. I can show up, I can do the work, I can do it on time, I'm going to clean up after myself, I'm going to behave and act in a professional manner, and the job will be done right because I am a competent roofer. My company is a competent roofer company, right? So you're going to design a marketing campaign around competence, and you're going to talk about your years of experience. I've been a roofer in this community for 15 years. And here's my testimonials, right? You're going to have a bunch of testimonials where people are going to say in the testimonials, these people came in and did a great job. They did a great job on my roof. I'm really happy. You may, if you're ambitious, have some case studies. Here's a particular problem that I found, because in this community, we have older mining homes with this type of roof, and we were able to deal with that problem because we're super competent. You may start a podcast in your local community or start a newsletter in your local community focusing on technical issues of roofing, which are designed to demonstrate your competence. And there is your marketing campaign. That's what 9 out of 10 businesses are going to do, I would think. Okay, I mean, some of them might just put an ad in the paper. Some of them might not advertise or have a marketing campaign at all. But if you're going to have a marketing campaign, you're probably going to focus on competence. I personally have been and am a service provider for 30 plus years. I've been helping businesses turn their management teams turn their businesses around. I've helped businesses refinance. I've helped businesses restructure. I've done business valuation. Everything to do with corporate finance and investment banking has been my career, and that is a service business, and I'm an expert at it. I've spoken in front of audiences of over 1,000 people, CFOs and CEOs at conferences. I've done a bunch of these shows, and I've sat on panels. I've been keynote speakers, And what is the first thing that I think about when I'm doing that work? What is my message going to be? It's going to be competence. It is going to be competence. That's what it always used to be. All right. And you see this all the time. If you, in your career, let's say you happen to be a nurse, which I know one of my listeners on here is a retired nurse, and you go to a medical conference, you go to a nursing conference, and you have a stage, and you have 5 or 6 people in a panel on the stage. What are they doing? Well, they're diving into a technical topic, and the speaker on there, the panelists on there, are really trying to prove how smart they are to the rest of their peers, right? I mean, that's what it's all about. It's about showing how smart you are to the rest of your peers. I know that sounds negative, but I'm telling you, I've been there. I've talked to a bunch of lawyers about this, lawyers that are actively sitting on panelists. And there's an element, not entirely, but there's an element of showing off, of showing how smart you are, of showing how in depth you are to your peers, okay? And of course, you're providing value to your peers, potentially in the in-depth nature of what you're talking about. But the bottom line is it focuses on entirely around competence. Look how smart I am. Look how competent I am as a turnaround expert, as an accountant, as a lawyer, as a nurse, whatever. You're focusing on competence. And when I started Martinis with Scott about 2 years ago now, cheers again, by the way, what I learned is that most people, when I talk about technical topics and try to prove how competent I am and how smart I am, most people don't understand what I'm talking about because I'm not talking to them. I'm not dealing with their problem, with what they value. Maybe out of an audience of 1,000 people, I'll find one person who happened to have that day that particular technical issue, and I was able to provide a competent technical solution. But for the most part, when I started, I really thought I was doing great shows based on my 30 years of experience of doing speeches and presentations. But what I quickly came to realize, and it was a painful transition, is that I was talking to me. I was talking to myself. I was talking to my peers, talking to other professionals who are in my space, but I wasn't talking to you. I wasn't talking to the audience. I wasn't talking to a business owner, an owner-manager, an entrepreneur, and I needed to adjust. I have worked with a number of other professionals now who have started to create content, and they're going through the exact same transition. It was the hardest thing for me, is learning how to migrate my communication, to transition my communication to understandable, non-detailed, digestible, implementable bites, to not turn this type of content into a white paper on a specific topic to show off my competence on that topic, because my competence in that particular topic is a safe space for me, right? I can talk about technical issues in asset-based lending or business valuation or mergers and acquisitions or turnaround leadership. I could do that forever, never really have to think about it, and it's a safe space for me, and I've really just accomplished patting myself on the back. On Clubhouse, as I said a couple of weeks ago, I was listening to a room on psychology. It was very interesting, and it's I find on Clubhouse you have the smart rooms and the not so smart rooms. This was or a non-business room entirely, obviously. This was a very smart room with a bunch of psychologists. I'm going to steal this person's example, and so if I knew who it was, I could give them credit, but I'm not sure who it is. But I want you to think about this. You're working in an office environment, and you have a coworker come in, and that coworker has been tasked or charged with creating a PowerPoint presentation on a topic important to the business. And that person comes in, and the PowerPoint presentation is half done. It's got a bunch of typos in it. The math doesn't work, and the thinking behind it is not very good. They've displayed a stunning lack of competence. a stunning lack of competence by creating a terrible PowerPoint presentation for the rest of the company. What do you do about that? Well, how do you feel about that is the real question. How do you feel about your coworker? You think, well, that guy or that gal is really incompetent, but you don't have an emotional tie to disliking that person. You don't have a ton of negative feelings. You just think, well, they're incompetent. That's a shame. But you don't hate that person, right? Okay, so there's example number one, tied to competence, okay? Now, that same coworker comes in the next day and says that they did a bunch of work and they accomplished this and they accomplished that. And then later that day, they look you straight in the face and they tell you that they've done all this. And later that day, you find out it was just a blatant lie. They just lied to you, okay? Straight to your face. And it's black and white. They lied to you. How do you feel about that coworker now? Well, now you feel a lot more aggrieved than you did when they had a lack of competence. Why? Because humans value trust over competence. They value competence, but they value trust more than competence. You have a stronger negative feeling for the person that lied to you than you do for the person that was simply incompetent. I'm enjoying my martini today. I hope you are as well. Okay, so trust is greater than competence. Now, you have another coworker or a friend, and they say, hey, I need your help. We need to do this and that, some errands. You get in the car and you drive around, and there's a whole backstory to what you're trying to do. And then you show up at a place, and when you open the door, 100 people jump out and say, hey, surprise, it's a birthday party for you. And you have a surprise birthday party. How do you feel about that person that lied to you about the backstory to get you to this surprise party? What is your emotional connection to that set of facts, to that outright lie? That person lied to you. They lied to you just as much as the coworker who lied to you about doing things that they clearly did not do. And the answer is you feel great. You feel great. And the reason is because people value benevolence, right? Good meaning, a positive meaning. They value benevolence more than they value trust. Benevolence is greater than trust, and trust is greater than competence. And by the way, just as a sidebar, there's something that is greater in my view than benevolence as well. So we got competence, trust, benevolence. I've told you before in this show that I have a couple times in my life met some rogue characters, let's put it that way. Business people who are larger than life, who you know for a fact when you meet them in a business setting, you just look at them and say, wow, they've uniformly been guys, men, by the way, so I'll just say this in a male context. You uniformly meet these people. I have met these people who are uniformly men, and I know for a fact that they're lying to me. I know for a fact that they might be competent at what they do, but I know that they're lying to me all the time. I know that I'm being set up, and I know that they that they don't have my best interests at heart. There's no benevolence going on there. They're shady people with a ton of charisma. And I've expressed to you on this show before some specific examples of that where I've thought to myself, man, I don't even care. I don't even care. Like I could sit and listen to this person for a long time. What is up with that? And now I've been able to stop myself from doing business with those people. Well, one time I didn't, and it was a very expensive lesson. But that wasn't my fault, by the way. That was a really expensive lesson into the seven figures, and I knew it was wrong. But I let my partners at the time talk me into a different decision, which I'll never do again. Let's not go down that path. But why is it that I can listen to these rogue characters who I know are not out for my best interest, are not being benevolent, are lying through their teeth to me, but they have this amazing charisma? Because I think, why do I put up with that? And I think the answer is the charisma feeds to your fears. It feeds to every human's fears, the sense of belonging. Because you always, when you meet these people, you get a sense of you're on the inside now. These people are so cool, and there's a club, and they feed you a sense of belonging. They make you feel valuable. They make you feel valuable because you had this opportunity to talk to these people, and they can look at you and make you the center of the earth, and in your mind, anyways. And that feeds to the fear. To the insecurities that everybody has as a human. I'm not a psychologist. I'm guessing that's the reason why. I think that's true. And if you talk to great salespeople, they'll tell you, if you ask them, what do you sell? The answer is fear, greed, and sex. The three things, the top three things. You're always selling fear, greed, sex. And by sex, I don't think they mean physical sex necessarily. We all know that sex sells. Playboy magazines, if you're an old person, sells. But I think the sex also includes belonging, companionship, friendship, being part of a group. So I would change that word to a sense of belonging. But the short, crass way to say that would be sex. So to me, competence, if I put this into a value hierarchy, competence, trust, benevolence, and then fear even trumps all that. If you can sell to fear. Again, as a sidebar, years ago, I was hanging out with a fellow on Bay Street who was one of Canada's top stockbrokers at the time. Okay, so I think he was literally, in terms of trades, probably top 3 in the entire country, and had a very diverse, high net worth, actively trading client base, AUA, assets under administration, within that, which is what stockbrokers, how they talk about their book of business, and just a tremendous salesperson. And one of these people that you're not sure about their benevolence, or you're almost positive that they don't have the benevolence, that they don't have your best interests at heart. They're probably lying to you, but they have a ton of charisma. I was out for drinks with this fellow one night, and he, we'd had a bunch of drinks. We were in a jazz bar, and it's that point when you're out in the evening, you younger professionals will know this, that, it's 11 o'clock, you've had a bunch of beers, and the talk is just gibberish at this point. It's not really adding any value, but you're having fun. And so we're in a crowded bar, and I said to this fellow, how do you sell fear, greed, sex? It was him that taught me that lesson. And he said, I could sell anybody anything, that sort of drunken conversation. And so, our waitress at the time, I remember her specifically, her name was Babs. I said, whatever, you can't sell anything. Sell Babs. I don't even know what that means, but, sell Babs. That was my challenge to him. We bet $1,000. I said, I bet you $1,000 that you can't sell Babs, without even defining what that means. And so he's like, no. And then he thought about it for a while. Now, you got to picture yourself. You're in a sort of a dungeon jazz club. There's people everywhere. It's loud. There's live music. And Babs has got a section, and she's hucking beer across, like way over there, across like 30 people. And this guy yells from the table. He goes, hey, Babs. And he gets her attention. He's yelling across the bar. He says, how would you like to make $100,000? And she's looking at him. She's a 20-something-year-old waitress working in this jazz club. I think she was going to school at the time as well. So he's yelling across the room, how would you like to make $100,000? So she drops her tray. She comes over to the table, and she said, what was that? And he looks at her and says, how would you like to make $10,000? So that was his opening. and she looks at him, and before she can even say anything, he says, Babs, this is not about sex. I'm married. I've got a bunch of kids. I don't cheat on my wife. I'm not hitting on you. There's no strings attached. It's just that this jerk across the table from me bet me that you would not be interested in these sorts of opportunities that us people on Bay Street have available to us. And he went on. He went on for like 5 minutes about what this was not. okay, which, by the way, is pacing and leading. It's speaking to her fear because she's a young, good-looking girl. I assume, I don't recall that long ago. A good-looking girl in the bar, and I'm sure she's getting hit on all the time by jerks who think they're rollers in life. And so he spends the first 5 minutes telling her that it's not that, and she's getting stressed about getting around to her table. So he lets her go, and she goes around, and she comes back 20 minutes later when she's done her rounds, and he says to her, "How would you like to make $10,000? And then he starts putting that into tangible items. With that money, you could buy a new car. You could get a new apartment. You could get out of this dump looking around the jazz club and have a real job." I mean, in her mind, he had spent maybe $500,000, not $10,000. But he started turning it into tangible things. Again, feeding on her fear and her greed. Okay, her fear being probably that she's going to be stuck in this job for a long time and not make the transition out to something more along the lines of her dreams, and greed. And gave her the card, and he says, "I want you to write on the back of this card the money that you would invest to get an amazing return to get you those things, the house and or the new apartment, out of the dead-end job." And I'm not suggesting that was a dead-end job, by the way, but you know what I'm trying to say. Out of the job, get a new car, whatever. Write the number that you can invest with me. And so she goes away to do her rounds again, and she comes back again 20 minutes later, and she says, she hands him the card. He doesn't turn it over, and he says, "I don't think you're thinking seriously enough about this." And he pushes her, he pushes the card back to her. He says, "I need you to think about how much money you could invest to change your life, okay? I need you to go away. I need you to think about this more." And so, anyways, trying to shorten this story up, a couple of times she came back with a revised number on the card, which he still didn't turn over. And he pushed her away at least 2 times. So anyways, the third time she comes back, gives him the card again. And this has been going on for, feels like an hour and a half at this point. And so what did she write on the card? Did she write 0? Did she write "go away"? Did she write $100? Remember, this girl is on her own in life. She's going to university. I don't know what debt she has. I don't know what credit card she has. She's working as a waitress, so she's making a little bit of money. So what's the number, right? I'm thinking $1,000, $500, something along those lines. He turns the card over. She writes $5,000 on the back of this card that she's willing to give to this guy in a bar who gave her this line and this pitch. Now, he didn't take the money. He got out of it gracefully, but she was in. It was a sale, and I wouldn't have let her give the money at the time, no matter how many beers that we had. He won the bet. He won the $1,000 because he sold fear, he sold greed, and a sense of belonging, right? Fear, greed, and a sense of belonging, which is the sex thing. So there's an idea of just how those things, I think, trump even benevolence and trust and confidence. Let's go back to our roofer story, though. You're designing your marketing campaign, and you're talking about how many years you've been in business, how competent you are. You've started a podcast, you've done case studies, you've started a newsletter, whatever you're doing, all designed around competence. Is that the right sell? After everything we just talked about, is that the right sell for your business? Okay, for what you're trying, when you're trying to persuade somebody, should you persuade based on competence? Or should you persuade based on benevolence? Based on trust is more than competence. Benevolence is more than trust. Benevolence, we've got your back. I was talking to a senior national partner of a law firm with thousands of lawyers last night on the phone, just having a chat. And he said, in their firm, they have a hierarchy. And at the bottom is competence. They consider that the ticket to get in the door. If you have to be competent, if you're not competent, we can't even begin to get a deal or to get a new client or to get some new business. So it's the ticket. It's a ticket for admission. But the top of the hierarchy for them is we've got your back, the benevolence. I hate that expression, by the way, but that is what you should be pitching. You should be pitching, you should be persuading. Even in your personal life, your persuasion is not about competence. It's not about trust. It's about, I've got your back. We have this connection. Always focus on that. Always focus on that. And then even what trumps benevolence is the fears. You're the roofing company. What are the fears of your target? This is not your fears. This is the people you're trying to sell. If I'm hiring a roofer, I'm worried about, or if I just have a roof on my house right here, I'm worried about maintenance. I'm worried about things falling apart after 20 years, leading to big bills. Maybe I can't afford the big repair that's coming because I'm not maintaining things properly. I'm worried about the value of my house declining because I have roof issues. I'm worried about the headaches. I'm worried about shady work people on my property. I'm worried about writing checks to roofers and the job doesn't get done. I'm worried about them leaving shingle nails all over the alleyway of my condo townhome in Toronto so that I get a flat $1,000 flat tire, not $300 flat tire every other week or so. I'm worried about that stuff. That's my fear. As a roofing company, tell me you've got my back. Tell me that you'll address those fears, and that is a good sales pitch. I do this, by the way, in my turnaround work now. I've learned this lesson. I've thought about it more. And my whole journey in personal branding has got me off of the competence thing, as I told you a little bit earlier, and more into thinking about the emotional connection, the benevolence, the fears, the worries of my target market. And now when a new business calls me up and says, Scott, we need help. We're in real trouble. Bank's moving in on us next week. What are we going to do? I don't talk about me. I don't talk about my competence. I don't talk about how I'm going to fix their problem. I talk about them. I in a sense, pace and lead. I jump ahead and say, this is what's going to happen. This is terrible for you. This must be the feelings that you have and the emotions and the stresses. And I bet you it's also leading to this. And I bet you that is leading to this. And here's what's going to happen next. And here's all the reasons it's going to be terrible. And all of that is true. All of it is forecastable if you've been in the business for 30 years like me. And all of it resonates with the target because they say to themselves, wow, this guy's done this before. He really understands me. I don't have to sell competence. It's a ticket. It's a ticket for admission. But I have to sell that I understand the predicament, the fears, and the problems of the person that I'm talking to. That needs to be my pitch. It is not, I know what you're thinking. Some of you are thinking, wow, that's manipulative. It's not. It's not. If you're in a shit show, you need somebody who understands what you're going through. You need that. You need someone who understands what you're going through. That's the person that you're going to hire. If you're a roofer, in our example, that's what you ought to be selling. Let's talk for a minute about, speaking of shit shows, let's talk about fear and overcoming fear. Have you ever wanted just to curl up in a ball? Just curl up in a ball and hope it all goes away? That feels a little bit like my last 2 weeks. Let me tell you about my last 2 weeks. We have a relatively small firm at Sinclair Range at the top of the pyramid of assets and businesses that we own. I had 2 senior investment bankers. One of them disappeared. This all happened in a couple of weeks, what I'm going to tell you. One of them disappeared. And I always say disappeared. He told me one day by email, hey, I'm not feeling well. And of course, we're in a global pandemic at the moment. Everything's virtual. We're a pretty virtual firm anyways. But he told me he's not feeling well. And then we literally never heard from him again. Emailed him back, called him on the phone, sent them text messages and chat messages on our system that we use, which is WhatsApp within the firm. I had other people in the firm call him. No one has heard back from him in a couple of weeks now. And I don't know if he was sick. I don't know if he died. I don't know what would cause somebody who's supposed to be professional not to just send a quick message and say whatever. And then the question, of course, people ask me is, well, is he just ghosting you? Did he quit without telling you? I mean, maybe. I mean, extraordinarily unprofessional thing to do if that's true. Certainly caused a lot of worry within the firm. But on the other hand, the younger people than me in my firm who have been trying to track him down assure me that he's just ghosting us, which means not responding to any of our messages, because you can see on certain apps, whether somebody's online or not online. So clearly at this point, I still worry about him, but clearly at this point, this person has just disappeared, probably on purpose. And so that's a problem. That's a problem for the firm. We were in the middle of files. We're relying on him. That's a problem. The second investment banker gave her resignation. I don't know why. A month ago, she loved the job. Now it doesn't fit with her career. That's not such a hit to the firm because, that was problematic anyways, but we're in the middle of deals. We got things going on. And so there's another resource that is walking out the door, which causes me a bunch of stress to go and hire somebody new. And so we're in the middle of that. A plant manager at our manufacturing facility at Navani, because I'll tell you, Navani Stainless, because we do the turnaround journey on Martinis with Scott, the turnaround journey of Navani Stainless on the Martinis with Scott channel. The new plant manager, who I was so high on and had my hopes for, resigned. His stated reason was he didn't like showing up so early in the morning because he had he had to travel to do it. Feels to me like something that he ought to have known when he took the job. But this all happened at the same time. So I've got 3 key people within my organization within 2 to 3 week period either disappear or resign. Again, at Navani Stainless, we're having a global commodity shortage. We don't have steel. Hard to produce sinks if you don't have any commodity to do that with. We knew it was coming, but the chickens came home to roost, so to speak. We've been out of steel for probably 10 days. We've just been doing make work projects, catching up on some old stuff, repurposing old sinks, not able to keep up with our orders because we have this downtime in steel. We've been calling all over the world, writing huge checks to suppliers in Asia that we have no idea who these people are, and we're hoping it works out. Extraordinarily stressful time. And in the middle of all that, Navani again got hit with a ransomware. Got hit with a ransomware probably 2 weeks ago now. Feels like that, maybe 10 days ago. Completely locked us out of our systems. Just completely locked us out of our systems, including our server with all of our marketing materials and labeling and all that sort of stuff, and our accounting system. We can't ship because we can't bill, and we don't have any steel anyways, but even if we did, for example, right now we've got several $100,000 of stuff sitting at the shipping door. That's not going out because we don't have access to the EDI, the electronic data interchange, something like that. That allows us to do the invoicing and to tick off the orders. And this is just a disaster. It's absolutely a disaster. What else was going on in this last 2 week period? We're in the middle of an acquisition and we were losing. We're losing on that deal. That may be coming around now, but asked me a week ago, wasn't feeling very good. I thought we were out. And we've got a divestiture going of a significant asset, which is going to bring a ton of money into the firm. And that turned into a disaster. Professional report just screwed the deal, basically. Maybe it can be resurrected. I don't know. But all of that was coming at me in the last 2 weeks. And it's amazing, even with all of my with all of my experience, with all of my know-how, what's in my brain. I know how to deal this. I know what to do, but it really takes over the emotional side. It really takes over how you feel. And what it does, to me anyways, tell me if this is the same with you, is it just saps your energy. It just completely takes your energy, and you want to curl up in a ball in a dark corner and just hope that it all goes away. Do you ever feel like that? I certainly did the last couple of weeks. By the way, you've been saying, hey, where's the weekly shows? Where's the daily touch bases? Where's this? Well, that's what's going on. That's what's going on. So what do you do in that situation? What do you do in this really dark time? By the way, I feel great today. I feel great today. I think the cloud has lifted. We're managing through this difficult period, and my emotional state has changed. But how do you deal with this wanting to curl up in a ball type feeling? To me, it's about managing your energy. And I think that if you can remind yourself every day or multiple times a day that what you need to do when you're in a shitstorm in life or business is you need to manage your energy first and foremost. Manage your energy, because the shitstorm is energy draining, right? So how do you do that? Here's some tips. Focus. I just made my list of my problems, and that's what I worked on every day. I stopped doing daily content, as you know, for a while. Have done my TikTok videos. I canceled the Clubhouse weekly live podcasts that we were doing. I've still had a Thursday. I love coming for a drink with you guys, so I still do that. But I've stopped doing everything else for a while, and I'm going to sort of reevaluate how we're going to handle this going forward. But you need to focus. You need to, if you have limited energy, I've told you before, whenever you have scarcity, as opposed to abundance, whenever you have scarcity, what you need to do is have a clear set of priorities. And you need to focus on those priorities first. When you're in this dark space, to me, you have a scarce amount of energy, and you need to apply that energy to the things that are going to make things better. Counterintuitively, what I do, I don't know if this works for you, but I start taking time out of my day to do other recreational, meditative type things. I'm not one to sit on in a field and meditate, or sit on the floor with crossed legs. I can't even cross my legs at my age and meditate. But for me, a mountain bike ride, a hike, or whatever, that's a meditative thing. And it just so releases your stress and cleans your brain and gives you a little bit more energy for after your event, after your ride, or for the next morning. I think it's hugely important. Focus on positives. Think about the positives, okay? Positives, to me, are the flotsam in a storm of shit. Flotsam in a storm of shit. It's a debris floating around this shit storm that you can grab onto and hold on tight. What are the positives in this situation? I turned this ransomware attack at Navani into an opportunity, into a positive, to reevaluate our system, change our tech teams, upgrade some of our systems, and it's working. It's working. And so you need to think about the positives. You need to limit your time thinking about the negatives. If you only have so much energy, negativity just saps it. It just saps it up even more. I've given you a hack on this before, a system on this before, which is, if you're in a short period of time, if you're in a crisis that's going to last 2 weeks, you can just do all the negative stuff. You can just focus on that. But if you're in a troubled business and that's been going on for years, you can't focus on negative all the time. You're not going to accomplish anything, and you're not productive. Find the time of day when you have the most energy to deal on your negativities, and just work your ass off within that period of time. Call it an hour, call it 2 hours, but then stop. Just stop. I'm done with negatives today. Now I'm moving on to positives, okay? There's another strategy. And along the lines of positivity, count your blessings. Just count your blessings. You know what? My life's pretty good. I could be in the shitstorm. I could feel dark. I could feel like I want to go in a corner, but my life's pretty damn good. Count your blessings and remember your purpose. Why are you in this business? Why are you trying to do this thing? What is your mission in life? That should be re-energizing to you, okay? So there's a frame of reference. Think about your energy when you're in a shitstorm, how to manage it, focus on positives, do meditative things to clear your mind, limit the amount of time you focus on negatives, cut the things out of your day that are peripheral, that aren't adding to the clear mission in a time of scarcity. And take responsibility. Take responsibility for everything. Don't be a victim. This is on me. Okay? My losing employees is on me. I should have had a better relationship. I think that those employees should have acted a lot better. But at the end of the day, I take responsibility for this. And I need to reevaluate in a virtual world, when we're not all in an office, how do we have a connection and clearly communicate people's roles within the various businesses that we have. That's on me. I need to take this as a wake-up call and as a positive to reevaluate my system for dealing with that. You know, we're growing so fast. We have so many new people. We're hiring all the time. You know, I need to rebuild that system for connections. As I told you before, I have rebuilt our tech system within Navani. There's another example of my response to the ransomware, focusing on the positives, taking responsibility, and making systemic changes. All right, what else do we want to talk about today? I want to talk about data. Here's my third topic for the day. Let's talk about data. Here's a quote for you. Without data, you're flying blind. Okay? In your business, without data, you're flying blind. Is that true? Oh my God, yes, right? It's terrible. Like at Navani, I told you when we bought Navani, we didn't have we bought it in June 2020. They hadn't really done any reconciliations in their accounting system for almost a year. For almost a year, they had a controller leave. They didn't replace that person. They said they were doing the accounting. They did their best. They clearly did their best. But it wasn't done to a standard that an accountant would do it, and therefore the accounting information is not very good. It has taken us a long time to rebuild that. It's pretty good now, but it's not perfect. But in the meantime, I had to make decisions. I had to make decisions about, do we increase our prices during this global pandemic? Shipping costs are up, freight costs are up, commodity prices are way up. Everything's there's a labor shortage, so you're competing for labor. All your costs are going way up. How much of that do you flow through to the end user, to the customer? How much are your price increases? And how do you know that, what the right answer is, if you don't even have an accounting records to figure out your margin? Okay, so there is a real problem. You know, at Navani, again, we're increasing overheads. We're hiring tech people, we're hiring accounting people, we're hiring plant managers and more maintenance people, right? So we're increasing overheads in a vacuum. I don't have any data that I can rely on or financial information to help with those decisions, or I didn't. I'm starting to get to that position now. And so without data, you're really flying blind. There is no doubt about that. Okay, and so you need, you know, the last person you should cut. There's two people that you should not cut in a troubled business: sales and marketing, accounting. Okay, you need the data. You need the data. Here's another quote. So the first quote was, without data, you're flying blind. Here's another quote. Actually, this is not a quote. It's just my recollection of a quote. I'm sure I'll have it wrong. I believe it was Mark Twain. He said, it's not what you don't know. It's what you know for sure that just ain't true. It's not what you don't know that's going to kill you. It's what you know for sure that just ain't true. What do you know for sure? You know what the data tells you. You believe that for sure. What is your relationship with data? See, those two quotes conflict with each other, right? What is your relationship with data? Do you seek it? Do you double down on it? Do you believe in it? And do you use simply the data to make decisions? As many of you know, I'm an avid listener to Scott Adams. You can check out his podcasts. It's mostly commentary on politics as a backdrop. He's not really political. It's more using politics as a backdrop to teach about persuasion, to teach about critical thinking. And it's just, I've learned a ton from him. And I think what he does for me is he's taken things that I already know to be true and that the way I operate, but he's put words around it. He's put a frame of reference around it that has helped me understand myself better, how I operate, and therefore be able to communicate it to other people. So he's been on a kick, and it's been a Twitter rant the last week or so with a number of high-profile influencers and intellectuals. And they're talking about studies on the COVID therapeutic, I think it's ivermectin, something like that. And we're not talking about the pandemic. We're not talking about therapeutics. That's not what this show is about. But the point being that there's been a number of global medical studies, a large number of them that have proven that this therapeutic ivermectin is highly effective, has a great efficacy at curing or dealing or limiting deaths from the virus. Okay, so you have all these studies from all over the world, different jurisdictions that say exactly that. But none of those studies are scientifically the blue ribbon studies, right? I don't know what that is, double blind, or they don't have a large enough sample size, or whatever it is. But none of them are of sufficient quality for scientists to say, yeah, this drug works really well on the COVID virus. But you have a number of smaller studies. And so scientists do all the time, mathematicians do all the time, what's called a meta study, which basically is say, okay, well, we've got this study here, and this study here, and this study here, and if we put them together and add them up, all of a sudden we've got a big enough study that we can rely on that data. And that's mathematically sound. There's I think he's a hedge fund guy and mathematician, super smart fellow by the name of Eric Weinstein. You can look him up. I believe that he's the one, maybe it was Brett Weinstein, one of the two, the brothers, super smart mathematician people are pushing this specifically on this drug, ivermectin, that if you take all this, it is mathematically valid, that you can take smaller samples and smaller studies, put them together, get a bigger study, and all of a sudden, statistically, mathematically, you've got valid results. And that's called metadata. Okay, and you can rely on that data. Does that work for you? Let me tell you something. I used to be an auditor, a financial auditor. I'm a chartered accountant. When I started my career, I became an auditor. And when you are an auditor, oftentimes in larger organizations, you're auditing systems. So instead of doing what's called a substantive audit, where you say, okay, well, there's, whatever, $1 million of accounts receivable, and you just go through them one by one, and at the end of the day, you get 80 or 90% of the receivables. You phone up the people, you owe this money. Yeah, I owe you that money. And then you can say, okay, receivables are true, right? That makes sense to me. But if you're in a larger company, you couldn't possibly call all those people. So you start testing the system. So let's focus on accounts receivable. Well, you look at the entries, the ins and outs into the accounts receivable. It says that this customer owes you $1 million. Well, you shipped, over the year, here's all the stuff that you shipped to this person, which creates that receivable. And here's all the money they paid you, which are collections, which take away from the receivable. Here's the credits you put through because you did something wrong, right? And so you can see the ins and the outs on the accounts receivable that end up with the final number. And then you test you confirm a couple of them as well, which means you do make some phone calls, all right? So you want to test that system, which means you need to pick a certain number of transactions and see that they were done properly and that the internal controls around that were adhered to. All right, so you say, okay, well, this is a good system. I understand it. I understand the internal controls. Let's see if this company is doing what its own system is and it's doing it fine. But listen to what I just said. You need to pick a sample. You need to pick a sample within, what could be millions of entries. Millions of entries. So how big is that sample? Which transactions do you test? Well, you pick them randomly. Well, how do you pick them randomly? In my day, which was before computers, because I'm a dinosaur, you just manually would go through and just randomly, as best you could, pick out stuff. Well, how random was your sample? Maybe not so random, right? You got to pick things that you felt like you wanted to test. Well, how many do you sample? How many transactions do you sample out of what could be a significant list of transactions? Well, they had audit manuals and audit books on this within every accounting firm. And they could be several inches thick of all the math behind concluding what you should sample. And in every firm I was in, it didn't matter what size the company you're auditing was. It could be a smaller company the size of ours, or it could be General Electric or Apple Computers, or it could be a massive company. It didn't matter the size. The answer was 10. The answer was always 10. You picked out 10. And so you randomly picked 10 out of this could be millions of transactions, and you followed it through. Did you ship? Did they pay? Was there a credit? Did people sign off on the purchase order? You go through the system and you pick 10. And if they were all right, if the 10 were dealt with properly within the system and they were accurate, then you said, cool, this system works. Okay? This system works because you randomly picked 10, and there you go. What happens if 9 out of 10 were right and there was an error? Well, then you had to go back and pick some more. And how many did you have to pick? Well, in our audit system, as I recall, it was 100. You went from 10, but if one was wrong, you had to go back and pick another 100 and do it again. What happens if 99 out of that 100 were wrong? Then you said, well, the system doesn't work. I need to do them all. I need to do all millions of these things and verify, call all of these customers and make sure that they owe that money. So it was pretty negative results. You went from 10, which is pretty easy to do, to 100, which is a hell of a lot of work, to the system doesn't work at all. I got to verify with every single customer they owe this money, which is, in a large company, maybe impossible. Impossible within the stresses that you have as an auditor, which is to get a good result within a budget, which means time, okay, which ties into your performance reviews, right? You screw this up, it's going to be negative on your performance reviews. And as a junior or senior or manager within an accounting firm, partners aren't going to work with you. There's a lot of pressure to kind of get this right and to find a solution. And so what can you do? You've selected your 10 and you find 2 that are wrong or 1 that is wrong. Do you now go ahead and select the 100? Or do you find a reason and rationalize why, yeah, it wasn't right, but there was a specific reason why, and so I can let that go? Which way do you think you're motivated? I can tell you that after years of auditing, I don't think I ever went to the 100. I don't know anybody that did. You went through the data, you found an error, and you rationalize, oh, yeah, that person was sick that day. That's why this didn't happen. And then it was corrected later, and so on and so forth. Does that mean the receivables were wrong? It does not mean that at all, okay? It means that the system falls apart and the person doing the audit, in this case, the audit, in my other example, the scientists, the mathematicians, there's always other pressures in the accumulation and synthesization, if that's a word, interpretation of data. There's other pressures that have nothing to do with math, and other motivations that have nothing to do with math. It doesn't mean the numbers are wrong. In the case of receivables, you also come at that issue in an audit from multiple different ways. So the risk is way lower than it sounds when I first tell you that story. By the way, I've talked to current auditors, younger kids. They say it's still the same. I mean, they have computers now and they do things differently, but the essence of this has not changed, okay? So let's bring that back to metadata applications. You have all of these therapeutic studies from around the world that are not in and of themselves large enough samples or handled properly to be considered scientifically or mathematically valid, and then you put them all together to come up with a meta study. Well, what studies are you putting together? What is the sample? How many are you putting together? What if you had in a sample of 10 studies, or if there was 10 in the universe of these, lesser studies, and 8 of them were kind of all clustered, and 2 of them were outliers, like just clear outliers. They didn't make any sense. Did you pick the 2, or did you limit your metadata to the 8? Who made that decision? Why did they make that decision? Does the difference in time matter, right? So if one of these inadequate studies was done today and another one was done a month ago, does that matter? Have the variants of the virus changed in the meantime? Do the other preconditions, the comorbidities in the different jurisdictions, do they matter to this, the stage of the disease? You don't know the answers. I don't know the answers to any of that. And to suggest that you can just mash all this stuff together and come up with an answer is gibberish. There's no way that that comes out with accurate data. If you assume that all other things are equal, then sure, it makes sense. What I'm trying to impress on you is that the entire theory behind the mathematics, behind physics, behind statistics, there's always implied assumptions, and the implied assumptions may not be true. All of finance math, if you're a finance student and you're learning about options costing or pricing, options pricing, securities valuation, anything that you do mathematically within finance is premised on an efficient market hypothesis. You assume that the market is right. Otherwise, you can't do the math. But if you live in the real world, the market's not right. It's not efficient. It's just not. Okay, and any day trader will tell you that. There's huge arbitrage all the time within markets, but you have to assume that away in finance theory, otherwise you can't do the math. That's always true. You have to make hypotheses to be able to even crunch through the numbers. Doesn't make it wrong. It doesn't mean that this therapeutic is not effective, okay? It just means that the data itself is gibberish and should not be relied upon. And this applies to your business, okay? It applies to your business. Common sense and to your life. You need to have a healthy dose of common sense and vision, because that's stronger than data. You can't make good decisions without knowing your numbers. I'm not suggesting that. I'm not saying your numbers are wrong. I'm saying you need to be skeptical all the time. You have to have common sense. You have to have vision. You'll have to look for other ways to verify, come at problems from a number of different angles, and double check and go, at the end of the day, go with your gut feel on this. That doesn't sound like data-driven decisions, Scott. Look, you need to learn in business to make decisions on 70% information. Target that, 70% information. If you're going 80, 90, 100%, 2 things are going to happen. Number 1 is you're too slow, and number 2 is you're probably going to be wrong because you're relying too heavily on data and you don't know the hypothesis and the sampling errors behind that data. Something to think about on the data front. What else do I have for you here? I think that's it. We've been an hour in. Great to be back in front of the camera. I know that there were some questions put into me. One that I like a lot was the idea of core values versus success. I'm going to try and tackle that next week. And in the meantime, thank you for listening. We'll see you next week. Cheers.